Hello, Texas Value supporters. This is Mary Elizabeth Castle, Director of Government Relations for Texas Values. So happy to be with you this day before the 4th of July weekend. So I want to say happy 4th of July to all of you. And let's not forget the original purpose of this holiday. We get caught up in all the barbecue, all the swimming, all the fireworks, but it is Independence Day. So definitely take some time to reflect about what that means for our country, what that means for our freedom, and why we celebrate this great day, and we put American flags on everything on this day. But hope you're enjoying some time with your family during the summer. This is our Texas Values Report, and we have a great guest today. He just calls himself, an average Joe, but he's actually someone who's making a lot of headway when it comes to freedom in our great state of Texas and all across the United States. But you've probably been on our show before. You've seen Coach Joe Kennedy in so many different areas, whether it's at the state capitol. If you've been at some of our recent educational events, he was the keynote speaker at our educational and fundraiser in Midland, Texas. Coach Joe is the famous football coach who faithfully went out every single game to play by himself at the 50-yard line, and then just as it naturally would happen, students started following him. But unfortunately, he was fired just for expressing his faith boldly on the football field. But he didn't stop there. Our great friends at First Liberty helped him sue the school district, and his case went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And not only did he win that case, but he also was a game changer in making sure that a long-held Supreme Court precedent on religious freedom was basically overturned. So, Coach Joe Kennedy, the average Joe, welcome to our show today.
It is so good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming on our show. We just, had you at an event last week. I know you're going around the country for many different things, but thanks for coming on with us today. We know that you're an acclaimed author and a movie star now, so we're very blessed to have you 2 weeks in a row at our Texas Values events and Texas Values programming. So, we've had you on the show before. You've spoken at our events, even our gala in Houston a couple of years ago. People don't know who this average Joe is, then I'd be surprised if they don't. But, just for old time's sake and in case we have a few new listeners today, can you briefly tell us your story?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was one of those terrible kids growing up. I didn't know what to do except for fight. So I was kicked out of every home I've ever been to, group homes, foster homes, boys' homes. I got tempered in the Marine Corps, so I served my country, and I really found my love for standing up for our Constitution and fighting for the freedom of our country. And when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was asked by God to actually start coaching football. And I did that for 8 years. And in our eighth season, like you alluded earlier, the school district ended up having a problem with it. And we had to take it to court. And First Liberty Institute, right there out of the great state of Texas, came to our rescue because no one in Washington State did. And we fought all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was a long, drawn-out battle. We lost 7 times in a row, but then we overturned, like you said, Lemon. And that is just the best part because that overturns 50 years of bad precedent and about 8,000 cases that now we have more religious freedom now than we had in the past 50 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. Think about it. Just your bold act of expressing your faith led to this grand decision that will affect people in the future. You were called to coach football. My dad wishes that was his calling, but that's not what God called him to do. But that's really great, to stand up for what you believe in. And now so many people in the United States, parents, teachers, anyone really can have a lot more confidence in doing what they believe in. And, because of that, many states are considering, passing laws that, like you said, since Lemon v. Kurtzman, which has been the infamous Lemon test, and, many religious liberty scholars feel like that has been soured over the years. So many states have, decided to have like their own laws that would, protect religious freedom of parents and students. So we have, Senate Bill 965 by Senator Tam Parker, which basically codified your court decision to make sure that students and teachers and schools can have that freedom and be protected from religious discrimination at school. But, from a non-policy, non-legal perspective, just personally speaking, why do you think it is necessary that schools protect teachers and students' rights, especially when it comes to religious expression or freedom of speech?
Yeah, and that's I really believe where we have failed as a society, especially for our students, for our families, is the simple freedoms that are given to us by God. And
Mm-hmm.
the First Amendment is super clear about the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech, and people get confused somehow with a separation of church and state, and they don't understand the meaning of that. Where we
Right.
do have to exercise our rights in and express our freedoms in every day, or we end up losing them because people get confused about what we can and can't do in public. And this just opens everybody's eyes to give them to the freedom to actually express their faith the way that God intended it and the way our founding fathers codified it in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that, maybe there were other coaches or other teachers, even at the high school where you were, who probably wanted to do things similar to what you did, or, maybe even wear, a cross necklace or a religious saying on a t shirt, but they self censored themselves because they thought, they couldn't do that. But that's not what our country's about. That's not what the First Amendment's about, and you're absolutely right about that. So, very thankful that we can move forward and, like you said, educate kids about that and make sure that they have that knowledge of what the First Amendment is, have that knowledge about where separation of church, where that phrase comes from, what it means. You probably saw when you were at the Texas Capitol, we have some legislators who mingle that a little and use that against us. But, it's very important that we do teach kids the meaning of that and just give them that courage and give them that faith that they can express their religious beliefs too. So, in the movie, it appeared that you just had a great relationship with, the players on your team. You were kind of like a mentor to them, and they had, so many complex things that that they were dealing with in their personal lives. You weren't just the coach who was like, okay, show up to play, be tough and then win the game and go home. So do you believe that your act of faith brought some hope and good influence, to these football players' lives?
Oh, I absolutely do. I've always taught my players to be good young men, and that's leadership by example is huge. I always tell them to do what's right. And when it came down to it, I would have been the world's biggest hypocrite if I would have turned my back and given in to the school and not stand up for our rights. And even though it was just a 15-second prayer, it was worth absolutely losing everything, my job, almost my family, all the pain and suffering, because freedom does come at a price, and doing what's right, it always pays off in the end. And I think every one of my players and the parents and people in our community and everywhere across the nation now totally understand that you got to put your money where your mouth is sometimes and back it up. So I wanted to be that living proof that you always do what's right and stand up for what you believe in.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned something that I found interesting. And I did go see your movie, which was great, by the way. But how did your case affect the community? We kind of have an idea of how it affected, the members of the team and the school and you personally. But what were people around town saying, when you were involved in this lawsuit about expressing your religious freedom?
Yeah, none of us could really understand why this was such a big deal. This was when they told me to stop praying with the kids, I immediately did that. I never prayed with the students again. So this was just an act of me doing a prayer by myself, and the community they came in full force. We had thousands of people come and actually take take over the football field after the game, and I tell you, it's incredible to see 5,000 people from your community out praying on a football
Oh,
field in
wow.
support.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. Like you said, it's just that courageous act is very contagious. So, yeah, that's so great to hear. So you were in, Seattle, is that correct? Like that's where the high school was. And so that's often seen as a place that might not be, as friendly, to Christianity and prayer. But do you think there is this overcorrection in the public schools and even the public sector of removing anything remotely Christian or religious? And you kind of touched on this already.
Yeah, and that's why I do what I do now is because I really believe that we need to correct the loss that we had. Like the Ten Commandments was in every building. In God we trust is our motto, and we just have completely lost that. And especially on the left coast, Washington, Oregon, and California have strayed so far, and that's why I fully support Texas values, because you guys are fighting for the entire nation. Everybody looks to you guys to see the heartbeat of what is happening in America. You guys stand for the red, white, and blue, and that's why I'm always standing with you guys, and will be with you all the time, because you guys are out there on the front lines backing us up and making a difference in people in my life. I mean, coming to my rescue, that was amazing. Writing amicus briefs and the support that I've had from you guys in Texas, just incredible. The prayers and support is just great. So, man, we can't live without you guys. You need to keep fighting your fight.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there was a movie that was made of you, and we have your book, right here that you wrote. How was it, having a movie being made about you? What was that experience like? I guess they said, you couldn't play yourself, but they did give you a cameo in the movie, which was very fun, you and your wife. So just talk about that experience of having that movie made. What was it like? And then also, what do you hope to accomplish by telling your message through that type of medium?
Yeah, it's just really weird. I mean, to think that, this average guy, actually a little below average guy, I think, just growing up in America could make this much of a difference. So it just shows the power of what one individual can do and what God can do in a community and in a nation. And it was just it was the world's biggest trip to have that, to just to be on the set and to see your life playing out on the big screen. But it is incredible that we get to share that, and I hope it inspires people. To me, it's a giant love story of my love for my wife, for my country, and for God. And hopefully other people will watch a movie, share it with their friends, and they'll be inspired to be able to stand up and say, well, if this guy could do this, ordinary average guy could do this. Heck, I could do it too. And like you said, be contagious to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can people still watch that movie? I know I saw it in theaters, but how can people access that movie if they haven't seen it?
Yeah, and that's a great thing, is that they still do make DVDs. I actually saw it at like a Walmart, so that
Oh,
was
that's
kind of
great.
weird.
Yeah.
You could order it on Amazon. You can also stream it. I know it's on PureFlix and on Amazon Prime. So it is a great date night movie for the whole family, and I highly encourage people to just stream it and have a great time. In hopefully you guys will rate it and love it.
Yes, well, I certainly did love it. But like you said, it's such an inspirational story. And that's what we try to tell our supporters all the time that, if there's something that you see in a school district or city council, in your hometown, don't be afraid to say something about it, to let us know about it because you can make that difference and you don't have to basically just settle for whatever they're saying, that you have to follow this policy, or you have to be quiet, or you have to, hide your faith. You do have those rights, and you should stand up. And look at you. You now are author, a movie star, but I know that you're doing this all because it's what you believe in, and you stood up for what you believed in. And now, so many students, teachers on school campuses, they can feel free in expressing those beliefs. So you have a book, you have a movie. What is next for Coach Joe Kennedy, average Coach Joe Kennedy?
Well, I started working in ministry. Vintage Gentleman. I don't know if you can see the shirt. And so I've been starting that to help men become men again, and to raise our next generation into being great young men, and to be gentlemen, because I think we kind of forgot that part of it. And also working for Coral Ridge Ministry out of Florida. And I tell you, God's just doing some incredible things. I just got back from a 3-day trip in DC, where I got to talk to all the White House staffers about
Oh,
our
nice.
story, and to encourage people. So wherever God calls me is where I'm going to go, and I'm going to be backing you guys up for the remainder of my life.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much, Coach Joe, for joining us today. And hope you have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And kind of your whole situation and story is just a reminder of why we have our country in the first place, is to have that religious freedom and freedom of speech. So thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you for always being a friend to Texas Values. Coming to speak at our event one week, coming back to be on our radio show the next. So we look forward to having you again, either in person on the radio show.
Absolutely. And God bless you guys, and God bless Texas and Texas values. I love you guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Coach Joe. Well, that was a great interview to have with Coach Joe, and just very fitting because of what we're thinking about this weekend with the 4th of July weekend, about all of our freedoms that we are blessed to have in this country. So that's just one of the many, and one of the many that we stand for here at Texas Values, religious freedom. And we're very excited about Senate Bill 965 and also Senate Bill 11, which actually sets aside a time period for prayer and scripture reading in schools as well. That was by Senator Middleton. So very happy about those two laws. But wanted to go over a few things that happened this week. We just ended our fiscal year on Monday, so thank you to all who donated, to all who supported us during that time. We really appreciate every dollar that you give to our organization. If you want to learn more about how to support our organization, please visit txvalues.org. We can't do this work without your support, so there are so many things, especially in just putting this radio show together. We're going to have a special session pretty soon on July 21st, so we really need your support to continue to do the work that we do at such a high and impactful level. If you want to learn more about the bills that we passed in the last legislative session, you can go to txvalues.org as well to learn about that. But there's been breaking news all this week about different things that we're involved in. Just this morning, we learned that the United States Supreme Court will take up the Save Women's Sports issue. Now, we've been so blessed. It seems like every single law that we pass, there's always a lawsuit to follow. We, in our minds, always prepare for that. On our policy team, Jonathan Covey and I always prepare that if there's some law that we pass in the session, there might be a legal challenge. The Save Women's Sports laws in Texas have not faced such challenge. And so that has been something that's been in place since 2021 for K through 12 girls, our college girls since 2023. But other parts of the country, they are still fighting this, common sense policy idea of keeping boys out of girls' sports. They're fighting it tooth and nail. And so 2 states are having their laws being challenged in courts, Idaho and West Virginia. And both of these cases will be heard at the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court did what they call grant certiorari, which means they agreed to hear these 2 cases from Idaho and West Virginia, and basically decide should boys be in girls sports, which is a very easy one. Typically sometimes you only have very difficult questions or questions you can't really answer, go to the U.S. Supreme Court, but we know that this should be a 9-0 opinion. It should be, but we do have one Supreme Court justice who does have confusion about how to define woman. So we do know we have one dissent on that case, or maybe not. Maybe she'll change her mind by then. But we'll keep you updated about when that will happen. Of course, our team did sign on to an amicus brief for one of the cases. I believe it was the one from Idaho. So we're very excited about this being discussed at the U.S. Supreme Court. And that only came after the University of Pennsylvania set an official apology to the girls who compete on their swimming team, and I think all female athletes, for allowing Will Leah Thomas, a native Texan, unfortunately, to swim on the girls' swim team for all of these years. So we're very happy that the U.S. Department of Education led the efforts on, punishing or, reprimanding the University of Pennsylvania for what they did, and allowing Will Thomas to compete and change in women's locker rooms. But very thankful for this, official apology from the University of Pennsylvania as well. Also, the ACLU has officially filed their lawsuit against the Ten Commandments law. You may remember last week, Commissioner Morath, during the State Board of Education, announced that he was served papers last Wednesday morning by a group of parents to stop the Ten Commandments bill from being enforced. Well, now the ACLU, an official organization, has filed their lawsuit against the Ten Commandments law, and there are a number of school districts that they named in that lawsuit to kind of stop it or enjoin it from going into effect. So we'll be keeping you posted on that as well. I believe we released an official statement yesterday on that lawsuit, but we will keep you updated on where these lawsuits are headed, what are the next steps, and just guidance in general on what schools should do when it comes to all of these education laws that were passed in the last legislative session and signed into law. Also, as I mentioned and alluded to earlier, there will be a special session that begins on July 21st. We have submitted formally to the governor's office by hand and by electronic delivery a letter asking that the Texas Women's Privacy Act will be added to the special session call. Also, if you're a coalition partner of ours and you want to sign on to that letter, be sure to email us and we can get you signed on so we can show that we have strong support for a special session request to have the Women's Privacy Act be added to the call. So if you believe in that and you want to support us, please email us about adding your name on to that letter. But we're very happy about the laws that were passed this session, including the What is a Woman bill, the Texas Women's Bill of Rights by Representative Ellen Truxclair. We'll be sending out more information and education on that. But so many breaking news stories that have been happening this week, and that's even more reason why you need to be sure to follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Always check our YouTube page for shows like these or any other type of videos that we do. But it's always good to keep up with us because news is breaking every single day when it comes to issues of safe women's sports, gender identity, protecting children from inappropriate materials. We had some great Supreme Court decisions last week, of course, on the age verification law, the Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton decision that came out last Friday right before we were going to an event in Houston, and that was one where I stood out in the freezing cold, 5-degree weather in Washington, D.C. on the Supreme Court steps for those oral arguments on that case, but very happy and pleased with the decision in that case to make common sense that kids should not have access to pornography and that they should check the age of their users. So very happy about that decision. Another decision that we weren't as active on but could very much impact our issues was one on LGBT books in the classroom. A case out of Maryland where some parents said, okay, because of our religious beliefs, we don't believe that these LGBT books should be read in the classroom. There was a very positive decision in that case as well. So our U.S. Supreme Court is heading in a very interesting and great direction, I would say. So we shouldn't be too concerned about the Save Women's Sports issue. And we know that it's in good hands. But like I said, so many breaking stories almost every single day. We're putting out some type of press release on some of our issues, which is even more reason why you should support us at Texas Values. Well, this has been a very great 4th of July weekend Texas Values Report. I hope you have a safe weekend with your family. Tune in next time for more updates on faith, family, and freedom. This has been Mary Elizabeth Castle with the Texas Values Report.